Hello dear chess friends, and welcome to our new video. In this video I will present some classical clash between Salo Floor and Milan Widmar Senior, Nottingham International Masters Tournament 1936. Very important game to understand concept of backward pawn and concept of hanging pairs in the center, and you will see what happened in that game. You will see how with very simple and very normal and healthy play, Salo Floor demonstrated his high level technique in converting so much better rook endgame into full point. Game was played in Queen's Gambit, c4, e6, knight c3, d5, d4, knight f6, and after bishop g5, bishop e7, e3. Everything is normal. After castling, knight f3, knight bd7, queen c2, c5 was played by black. Okay, and now white plays c takes d. That's first step to making pawn on d5 isolated and weak. Knight d5, bishop e7, and queen e7 was chosen by Widmar. White decided to capture, and as you can see, sooner or later that d4 pawn will be exchanged for c5 pawn, where black will stay with bad pawn on d5. But of course it is not tragical to stay with isolated pawn if you have enough pieces to compensate that weakness with activity of that pieces. Well, simply usually in such positions black installs knight on e4 and attacks with dark square bishop, but the point is here two pairs of minor pieces are already gone, and black does not have knight on e4, black does not have bishop on dark square diagonal to attack on white king side position on the king side, on white castle position on the king side. So after e takes d5, white played bishop d3, getting tempo. I think here h6 looks more precise, but g6 is somehow not good. White wanted maybe to attack there on the king side. G6 eliminates that chances to attack on that diagonal, but gives white impulse to play h4, h5, maybe in middle game, maybe later in end game. h6 anyway will look more precise. After g6, d takes c, knight takes, and castling. Bishop d4, and of course knight goes to central position on d4. Knight is played on its internal and best position. Rook a c8, queen d2, a6. Black sets all pawns on light. That cannot be good strategy, but this time we can see that black wants to get control over square b6. I don't know. Maybe he was afraid of knight b5 jumps. In some moment, maybe with that he just prepares rook c7 doubling, and then knight b5 would be not possible. Bishop c2 was played. That would not be my advice. White to move that bishop. It would be bad for black to take that bishop. White wants to put bishop maybe on b3, but we can see that white should still go for doubling. Why not rook a c1, and after doubling rook c3 with doubling again? That must be good for white. Position is definitely better for white, bishop c2, but now on the other hand black wants to organize something on the king side, but there is nothing to organize. f3, opening second rank, but maybe weakening pawn on e3, bishop d7, rook f1, prophylaxis against attack on e3, and black goes for prophylaxis supporting pawn on d5. Rook a d1. I definitely think white would do bad job by putting rooks on that two files. Simply it is too early to attack on d5 prematurely, and maybe I would try in some moment with rook c1, bishop b3, maybe even b4 to strike first on the c file. But let's see what happened. Queen f6, bishop b3. Now we see that was white idea. However, that would be very difficult for white to double that rooks, because queen cannot find appropriate spot, and tripling on that file looks almost impossible because black has knight to disturb white pieces. Anyway, black has bishop a4. That must be good move. Generally, if you have isolated pawn, it is not good strategy to exchange so many pieces because transferring to endgame would be in opponent favor. But it is definitely good to exchange that light square bishop for light square bishop. After bishop a4, knight a4, rook c1. Finally, white goes for controlling that c-file. Knight c5, rook e d1, and finally, after move knight b6, white played knight e2. Square d4 is vacated and can be used for white with white queen, or maybe rook. Knight itself goes to c3 or f4 to put serious pressure on pawn d5. So let's remind Aaron Nimzowitsch advises isolated pawn should be first clearly firmly blockade to evidently leave opponent without any counterplay with possible advance and sacrifice of that, or maybe exchange it. And after firmly blockading it, you should work on transferring, switching from blockade to attacking setup. Knight d7. Black intends to transfer knight maybe to c4, but white will just prevent it with b3, and white of course goes for trading queens. In endgame without queens on the board, that weakness on d5 would be easier accessible. Queen takes, normally knight takes, and we can see after knight e5 there is b3, king f8, king f1, not king f2 of course, because white will lose after this. So king f1 and rook c1. Simply, that is evident and horrible mistake. Black was not forced to take this. Why not king e7, king d6, making king closer? That was normal move, and in such simple positions, normal moves should be done automatically. Every thinking, every spending time will be probably connected with some strange imagination, some strange creativity, fantasy, and maybe will give you just some, will just bring you some illusion. Of course, rook c1 is just an illusion. Black wanted to exchange some material and he went for some trick, of course, knight c6. His idea was after that to go for trick, thinking he can easily hold that, but of course there are huge problems. With simple move rook c5, white forces black to take with a pawn, otherwise pawn d5 would be gone. And now king e2, king d3 and king d4 after rook a5. We can see that black has two weaknesses, but because they are so close each to other, we should count them as only one weakness. Accordingly to great Aaron Nimzowitsch, white should play patiently, first preventing black's any action on queen side, I think about c5, and then to strike with expanding on the king side, with idea to create second weakness for black on the king side. By creating second weakness for black on the king side, white would be able simultaneously to attack one weakness and then another, and because of having more space and better mobility, white will definitely have better communication lines. Let's once again remind great Nimzowitsch, thanks him for that term. So better communication lines, yes. Side having better communication lines will easily regroup from one side to another, and it really looks black would be forced in some moment to collapse. How to continue? Black played f5. He had idea of exchanging so many pawns if white goes for e4, and to prevent g4 with potential fixing. That is a reasonable strategy, but f5 also will make some other weaknesses, as you will see later. Generally, I must say once again, it is good strategy to exchange pawns if you play for a draw. b4, rook b8, a3, rook a8 and e4. With his previous moves, white fixed black queen side weaknesses, and now he opens fifth rank for easier transferring from queen to king side. Black must take twice, and rook a7, black must wait. King f4, h6, and now it's time for white somehow to make progress That's why he played h4, king g4 and h5. Idea is after eliminating g6 pawn, doesn't matter if black takes or advances, black decided to advance. Now white king will get access to f5, also white rook. And first g3 with idea not rush, because black would be able after king f3 maybe to go for some counterplay after that check. So for g3 there would not be checks at all. Rook a7, now king goes to e4, king d4, now black king must follow you, and now after some, here was possible to play rook f5, there is nothing wrong with it, but white played a bit different, so king d6, king e4, rook e5, and finally, once again, white rook invades 8th rank. After rook e8, c5, that's desperate try to find any counterplay on the queen side. Alas, there is nothing to find. Now if king e6, pawn falls. If king c6, check and pawn falls again. Rook h7. Now black rook protects pawn h6, king protects pawn a6, but in both cases, even now or in earlier setup, black pieces are so passive and must take care about white pieces. Okay, white just invades, rook e5, preparing rook e6, making rook fully active. There is nothing wrong with king f5, that should be winning also. But white chose another way, and after this, rook f6, black resigned. It's really difficult to find some fatal mistake, but actually I will just go back to show you one important moment. Well, black played just primitively for a draw, exchanging all pieces, and rook c1 is, I think, fatal mistake. After that, black is in huge problems, but after knight c6, I think his position is already hopeless, because as you can see, that endgame simply should be winning for white, because black has both many weaknesses and passive king and passive rook. Classical example, brilliantly performed by Flor Salo, who gave us so instructive example how to convincingly and smoothly convert such huge positional advantages. I hope, dear chess friends, you can learn few things from that example, and thanks again for watching and supporting us. See you soon with new videos. Bye bye.